Hey everybody, Kate Payne here from Coffee with Kate. And I have my special guest in the room today who would normally be putting up his mug and doing a little virtual toast with me. But unfortunately, Tim, your mug arrived a little broken. So you can still do a sort of a broken virtual toast with me.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you. So everybody, my guest is Tim. I know, is it Salmans? Is that the right pronunciation?
Salmans is the right pronunciation.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. So Tim is a best-selling author. He's been a collaborative author, and now he just finished, very recently, launched his his own book, and it's called Inner Wisdom, Outer Impact: Leading Your Life from the Inside Out. But he's a best-selling author in multiple categories and highly regarded engagement trainer with nearly 3 decades of experience as a leadership and empowerment consultant. He works with individuals, teams, organizations, just lost my spot, seeking to strengthen personal growth, unlock untapped potential, and empower clients to overcome limitations. Through his work, Tim helps build resilient leaders, high-performing teams, and coaches to expand their personal impact. He is also the founder of companies Insights for Choice and 3G Professional Solutions, as well as the host of the Powerful and Unpolished podcast, which we will be talking about later. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad you're here. I actually am happy to call Tim a friend. I've actually met Tim from being in Colorado. We're both from Colorado. And Tim is actually a member of eWomen Network, which you all hear me talk about ad nauseum. And so when a man joins eWomen, we, in a very silly way, refer to him as an email. Bada bing, bada boom.
Full of information. You usually send me to the junk pile. No, just kidding.
Anyway, so I've known Tim for a while. We've worked together, and I've been on his podcast, which is a great podcast. You should absolutely listen to it. Powerful and Unpolished. We'll talk more about the podcast toward the end of our time together today. So welcome to anybody who's joining us live. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, you're seeing us live. And then for any of you who are joining us on the replay, welcome. And so let's dig right in. I want to first talk about something. So the name of this episode today was basically "Jump into the Volcano," and that's a phrase of yours. So explain. Give us some context on that.
Well, there's many different. When you look at any situation, there's many different layers to consider, right? Back in the day, they used to think that you would appease the gods by jumping into the volcano. If you're a virgin. If you weren't a virgin, the volcano would then erupt and destroy everything, right? And life can be like that sometimes. If we aren't in pure of heart, pure of thought, what might come up for us? And so jumping into the volcano is an aspect of, there's a lot out there. There's a lot that we can step into if we're willing to go into the cave, into the tunnel, into the depths. And it's just an opportunity to explore. And, volcanoes, oftentimes when we hear about volcanoes is when they're erupting.
Right.
However, virtually most of the land masses that exist on this planet stem from volcanoes. And
right.
So there's that positive birth. And what are you trying to create for your life out there in the world?
Right. Thank you for that. One of the things I love about Tim and when he is working with people and in his book and even on his podcast is, we all talk about being authentic, and sometimes the word authentic itself can be seen as an overused word. However, it means what it means, right? And it's about being yourself. It's about being unique. It's about showing up as who you are, not packaging yourself into something else. And if there is nobody I know better than you, Tim, to have really engaged, authentic conversations. You're one of the most thoughtful people I know. And I don't mean like
Wow.
thoughtful and giving a gift. I mean, you just think things through. I mean, whenever I talk with you, and I know a lot of other people who know you feel the same way, it's engaging and you just get captivated. So you have a gift.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So let's just touch briefly a little bit on your background. When you and I were working on your LinkedIn profile together, we had talked about, that you were into sports when you were in high school? And
since I was a little kid.
you're a little kid, right? But you were on teams and stuff like that, and also you were in the theater. And one of the things that you mentioned to me was sort of a natural ability that you developed was that you have this sort of ability to read people. So explain, just kind of give us a little bit of context on that aspect of your background, because I think this is the piece that sort of inspired you or motivated you to end up going into the work that you do.
Wow, that's a big question or a big exploration. Yeah, the being able to read people is it's part of my path. It's part
Mhm.
of the growth and lessons, the pain, the trauma, the whatever you experience, however you want to describe it. And for me, it was as an athlete, I had success. Like I had two older brothers that were good at sports. So when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, I was getting hit in the head with a baseball or, whatever it was. It was like,
You're getting
eh,
hit upside the head, as they say.
yeah, and I kind of learned, all right, if you want to play, you still have to, you have to engage, you have to be on the field and you have to participate. And so I found a lot of success there. So I mean, early on, I'd say probably for the first 5, 6, 7 years, I was the quarterback. I went for the leadership positions. I was a pitcher. I was a linebacker. I was one of those things. And the truth is any position on the field is a leadership position, depending on how you hold it, right?
Right.
But I didn't know that as a little kid. To me, it was like that was just an area where I had natural success and had high statistical results.
Hmm.
Um, Flip to the other side, in school, I didn't understand school, didn't understand education. It was I was handed or given a label as
Hmm.
learning disabled
Hmm.
as in the first grade. And so that was an interesting, I have success in the sports world and you go out and you apply yourself and you get rewarded. And in school, it was like, it didn't make sense. A lot of the stuff that I was doing, reading in front of people, I didn't even know why I was reading. Why do I have to read this? It doesn't make sense, right?
Right, right, right.
And so the interesting thing is they gave me this label, and that was before all the ADHD and all these other categories and classifications that have come out. So what happened was they took me out of the class because they figured that was too much of a distraction. So they put me into an office with this nice lady who basically gave me a book and said, "Teach yourself." And
Wow.
that was my special ed first year and a half, 2-year experience. And I'm like going, wow, is this what life's really about?
Yeah, right.
And so the dynamic of trying to fit in and not fit in and fitting in when I wanted to and struggling and seeing other people around on their paths experiencing different things, I just really started to pay attention. I started
Hmm.
listening on a deeper level. And part of it was self-preservation, because there were a number of times I ended up in situations with bullies or stuff
Hmm.
like this. And luckily I had some size to me, so I was able to step in and handle the situation. But energetically, it made me want to vomit. I hated it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all. So I preemptively would watch people and I would listen to their behaviors and their actions. And, I didn't even know why I was doing it. It wasn't a cognitive thing.
Right.
It was a
Well,
self-preservation.
self-preservate, you're just ensuring your safety, basically.
Yeah.
Your
And,
comfort.
by the time I got to be into my, like when I went into college, I was going on a sports scholarship, and I was originally going to transform education or sports into education because I knew I wasn't really going to go pro. And before I went to college, I had an accident. There was an accident, a car accident I was in, and I broke the dashboard of a truck with my face. And
Wow.
it it actually was its own blessing. I didn't realize it at the time,
Right.
but I realized that I needed to not just use my body to advance my life, advance my goals
Right.
for me. And so I had to go through sort of my own little sort of soul death there. But part of the soul death was realizing I I didn't know who I was. I
Hmm.
was such a chameleon. I was listening to the world around me. I was able to read other people, but it was like, who the heck was I? I
Right.
mean, it's really great having the skill to be able to fit in and be flexible and malleable and adapt.
So how does all of that then just sort of, obviously I realize the natural alignment of why you went in to get into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And just kind of, just for our listeners, just sort of give us a little synopsis of the coaching work that you do and the types of teams you work with, just to give some context, and then I'll follow up.
So the coaching I do is, I like to consider it transformational coaching. What does that mean to people? It means whatever it means to you. I mean, we have so many coaches there. There are so many wonderful coaches out there, but it's the aspect of, there are also coaches out there that, you want to make sure it's a good fit. Make sure it's a good fit for you.
Right.
But in the transformational coaching, for me, part of the reason why I wrote the book, we're going to talk about the book in a little bit, but part of the reason is I kept seeing the world. The book had been coming to me for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, great. This is great insight, great information, but why do I care? Why do I need, right? And I'd use it wherever it fit. And for me, it was that aspect of realizing a lot of people are doing. They're the doingness of life.
Mm-hmm.
And our culture conditions us. Our culture programs at us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are you doing? What's your strategy? Is your strategy working? Change your strategy. Go do more. Go do more. And I felt it myself, and I see it in other people where they're having results and they're still struggling with anxiety. They're still struggling with depression. They're still struggling with lack of fulfillment.
Right.
And as the transformational coach, I was like going, what is it that is missing?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I just started to really kind of work with people who wanted to go to a deeper place with themselves to get more fulfillment.
Right.
And have results that mean something to them, not just mean something for a brief period of time to the world.
Would this sort of segue into what you talk about with labels?
Oh yeah.
Because you mentioned it when you were talking about the sports piece, but just kind of, again, give our viewers a sense of what you mean. I mean, I think we all get hung up by labels. We're all guilty of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, sometimes when we stop and pull back, we get perspective, right? And then we realize that we can pivot and nobody's going to die.
Right.
I mean, I've just been through this in the last 6 or 7 weeks. I've been away and mostly solo. But I did it on purpose because I really wanted to get refocused on my business for standing out online, and my podcast, by the way. I've got a whole goal for this year. And I realized, like, even though I've had these great coaches, they've gotten me to a certain point, and I'm grateful, because I never would have gotten here if I hadn't had that. So, investing in the coach is a good thing. Investing in someone like Tim is a really bold, good move to make. And then I realized, something, I can actually make the decision I need to make. If I'm going to be innovative and I'm going to stay on point, I can change. I can pivot a little bit. And that's another overused word, but I have the right to do that. And I'm taking into account our environment right now, our climate. I don't mean the environmental climate, but the business climate. And I think that's really a good perspective. It gives you perspective, and it's a good strategy to stay fresh and innovative.
Well, we're all growing. We're all growing and evolving. The question is it intentional, or are we in our patterns?
Right.
So we come back to, you talked about the labels aspect.
Yes.
We all have labels.
Mm-hmm.
We all have labels that we buy into. We all have labels. There's a chapter in the book where we go into labels, and it talks about, listen to how people talk. This is all the art of the relationship of listening. Listen to how people talk. First of all, how often do they lead with their labels, their justifications? I still do it. Even though I know about it, I still do it quite frequently.
Yeah.
But it's the opportunity of digging into this human expression, digging into our authenticity so that we can be present in the moment, impactful, are we engaged enough to know, all right, I'm doing my pattern, but I'm cognizant of doing my pattern. I'm cognizant of the label I have. A lot of times people, and to your listeners right now, think about maybe your own self, but think about the world around you. How many people do you know, they'll throw out this label? Oh, I'm ADHD, or I'm a single parent, or it doesn't mean that the label's not true. The label's true, but it's how it is related to
Right.
as to whether you're coming from a position of power or empowerment, or a pattern of disempowerment. And oftentimes these labels, when they're coming from a pattern of disempowerment, it's what I call in the book a power grab.
Right.
You may not know it, but subconsciously you're trying to level yourself up. You're trying
Mhm.
to make a part of our ego feel, adequate, or have a description, and a description of defense, a description of justification. And it's like when we
Yes.
start to get into our authenticness, when we start to get into being genuine, and we show up presently, and we be creatively,
Mhm.
we put intentional action into something, that's probably one of the strongest, powerful positions we could ever be in.
Right.
If we look at our environment, sorry,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
if you look at our environment that you just sort of referenced, there's a lot of people though that they're not present. They're
Right.
not owning their they're
They're
active.
reactive.
Yeah, they're very reactive, which is
Right.
a weaker energy.
Right. Right. Well, and sometimes our labels can box us in, even if that's not the intention. Like
Yeah.
we just keep telling ourselves a certain story almost. And then it ends up boxing us in and it doesn't allow us to have that awareness or that being open to possibility. And you and I have a shared friend, Betsy Clark, another fabulous coach and one of my coaches too. And I've been working with her on PQ, on positive intelligence. And we spend a lot of time talking about this, and I'm sure you're familiar with it too. There's the saboteurs, right?
Yep.
So and that's kind of like what the label is it can sometimes box us in and limit us.
Oh yeah. It's and we all have saboteur awareness. It kind of goes
Right.
back when you go into those labels and those thinking. It's like, are we, when we're challenging ourselves, are we actually doing it in a constructive, healthy way? Or
Right.
is it a pattern that is common, that is destructive?
Right.
It's a saboteur energy.
Right.
When it first started, maybe it was to protect us, but now it's actually getting in our way. And I
Hmm.
actually have a number of story of clients that, they thought they were truly doing what was in their best interest, and realized it was a saboteur that was keeping them trapped.
So, you bring up a good point. So this is a good thing. When I'm working with people with my clients from a marketing standpoint, I always let's talk about what we know, why we're the right person that person should be working with, but also what is the benefit that we provide? What is the result we provide for the client? So in that sort of spirit, give me a little, you don't have to name names, but give me a little mini case study or an example of when somebody had that awareness, because I know when I had that awareness, um, I was like, whoa, it was just like, holy smokes. And it really, it took all the other stuff that happened to me to finally then have someone open that door and that perspective and that awareness. And I went, oh my God, and it's liberating and it's exciting. What have you seen in some of the people when when they've had that aha for themselves?
That's what I love about what you just shared.
Yeah.
It's liberating. That's why I love what I do, is to be there when somebody is doing the work, because we don't do the work for them. If
No,
you have
they have to do it, right?
if you have a coach that's promising you stuff, run the other direction.
Mhm.
But if you have a coach that can really help you stand strong in the weather, in the storm, then they're worth $1,000,000. But the
Yep.
thing is, this is, I have a client, I have a few stories, but the one that jumps to mind from what you just shared is, this person had spent a number of relationships and a number of years, was in what we would call a pattern of relationships with con men. Okay. And
Mhm.
she was very intelligent, very successful, but really on guard when it came to personal relationships and vulnerability. And when she came to me and we started working, it was like, I keep finding all the wrong men, this kind of aspect.
Mhm.
And we started to explore what it was. And, oftentimes when we're in that position, we're looking out, we got to protect ourselves from the outside world. But she wasn't working on her internal fortress.
Yeah.
We started to go into, where are you disempowering yourself? Why are you putting up such barriers?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that really broke the dam for her at that moment was, I said, think about all of the protective layers and tests that you put up for men that you meet. Who's going to get beyond those walls? Who's going to get beyond that fortress? And she's thought about it, and she thought about it, and she's like, well, a good man. And I said, I just have to share this. A good man's not going to hang around long enough to deal with that. The only people who are going to get over those walls or under that razor wire is a con man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Wow.
like her
That's
world
powerful.
exploded,
Yeah.
because I said, what is it that you're trying? What is it you're not trusting in yourself that you can't, relate to this person and realize, wait, there's too many red flags. I wish
Mhm.
you well. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
It was like she wanted the barriers to reject the bad people, because
Right.
she didn't trust herself that she could do it herself.
Right.
Now she's had a relationship for almost, well, last I talked to her, like 7 years, and
That's great.
very successful.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. So for those of you who are listening, if you have any questions or comments for Tim, certainly feel free to put them in there, and we'll get your questions answered. And even if you're watching this on the replay, you can always in the chat tag at Tim Salmans or tag me, especially if it's in LinkedIn. You don't have to be connected to Tim in order to tag him. And then we'll get notified. We can always go in and answer a question in the chat from the replay. So let's shift over to the book. So you and I actually were both co-authors in a collaborative anthology book. And I knew you were working on your own book on sort of, I want to say on the side, but actually it's like, from what I'm told, it's like birthing a baby.
Yeah.
So your book is called Inner Wisdom, Outer Impact, Leading Your Life from the Inside Out. And so first, just briefly share what inspired you to do this book, because you sort of teased it at the beginning. Just give us a brief little thing about what inspired you to write the book, and then let's dig into some of what's in the book.
What inspired me? Well, ultimately, probably what inspired me to write the book was my wife. But the thing is,
Yay, Deb!
yeah, this
Hi,
book,
Deb, if you're listening.
this book had, so I have another book that isn't written, but I've had with me for probably 25 years. And my wife keeps wanting me to write that one. Well, I started to work on that. And this book that had been nudging me for like 8, 9 years, I'm like going, great, this is great information. What am I, all this. And I came back from a concert with my wife. I came back, and all of a sudden something just clicked. I mean, I wasn't paying attention, wasn't thinking about any of the material. And it was like it downloaded into me, and I was going, wow, all right, that makes sense. And my wife's looking at me like, you're talking in hieroglyphics. I don't even know what you're talking about. And I was like going, I get it. You don't understand. But if you really understand all the connections and on an individual level, that's huge. That's big for us. If we can pull apart and play with possibility and start stepping into action and out of reaction.
Right.
And over the 8 years, I kept watching, clients I was working with, the world around me getting more pointing fingers and righteousness. And I'm like going, wow, you're creating your own misery and you're blaming everyone else. And that's kind of the world we're living in right now. It's like it's everybody else's fault. There's no space for someone who's not like me, even though I'm going to say it. See, we think that because we think it's the same thing as truly embodying it, and it's like it's not.
Right.
We all trip over ourselves and fall into the trap of, because I think it, I have it. No, that's not true. Your behaviors will create whether it exists in your space, in your life, or not.
Right.
Not because you know information.
That's an excellent point. So so let's just dig into the book a little bit. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up with you is, you talk about trust. And are we enough? Over to you.
That's a big question.
It is a big question. It's a
You
very
know,
big question. I mean, we could be on the show all day talking about just that one thing.
and
Um,
that's why it is trust. It is who are
so, well,
we?
let's give it context.
Okay.
In what sense of the word trust do you sort of bring about in the book?
Trust, it actually comes out in many different areas, but ultimately
Mhm.
it's about this. It's are you open to what's available to you? So are you trusting? Are you one of the greatest strengths that we have as individuals? And there's books out there. I know Brene Brown does stuff
Yes.
around it too, but it's about vulnerability.
Mhm.
Vulnerability is an absolute superpower,
Absolutely. 150%
right?
agree. Yep.
It's an absolute superpower, and it's always been there. I mean, the one thing that, and I love Brene Brown. I
I
think
do
it's
too.
great who she is, and what she's done, and all that kind of stuff. But the other aspect is part of the book is part of the trust factor is getting into the relationship that you have with your own ego.
Mhm.
Like we think of the ego as being
You know
just
what? I'm
this.
going to pause there. I want you
Okay,
to repeat that line. The relationship
okay, then tell me what I said because I
with our
channel.
with our own ego.
Oh yeah.
That's a powerful statement.
Oh, most people don't have their ego is on autopilot, and when
Yep.
there's an autopilot, there is no pilot. It is just running patterns.
Mhm.
Your life, your what you're shooting for, you're just running patterns. And when we start to get into practice and get into relationship with our ego, you start to realize that part of it is the healthy ego. We need the healthy ego. We need to honor and appreciate the healthy ego. But that's the part of the ego that says, don't step in front of the bus.
Yeah.
Don't hang out in a burning house,
Right.
don't.
Don't put your hand on the hot stove.
Right. That's essential. The thing is the mass majority of the rest of the ego is insecurity, self-indulgence, seeking validation 24/7. I mean, it's like it is a constant drug.
Mhm.
And we talk about it as, oh, it's the ego, it's the ego. And it's like going, no, it's all about our relationships. And when we get into relationship with that part of ourselves, when we grow into what's possible for us, we start to move into a thing called trust, a trust in our ability. I tell clients all the time, don't be afraid of making a mistake. Be afraid that you don't have the strength and the wherewithal to make the attempt to clean it up.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
yeah, if other
Yep.
people don't want to give you the space or the time, you know what? You did your part.
Right.
But you'd be surprised. There are a number of people that if you do lean in, you do get vulnerable, you do trust that you can handle it because it's scary. Who wants to go into I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
Right. And
Right.
so they will go into that. And when they do, it's like sometimes you're amazed. You hear some of the most amazing stories out there that are examples, and we put them on this pinnacle, but we don't live from the simplicity of that. It's like, yeah, this person lost his son because this other person's son was in a gang and
Mhm.
killed him, and then they developed this rapport while he was in jail, and then they built a community around forgiveness. It's like there are, it doesn't have to be catastrophic like that,
Right.
but we don't have to. There is no have to's. You get to. You either get to choose
Yes.
it or you don't. But what's available is when we start to participate and play in that realm, our life transforms.
Mhm. For sure.
Our internal world transforms. And that trust that we start to trust the world around us because we trust ourselves more really starts to become an act of faith.
Right.
Faith in self, faith in what I am doing on my path to make something better.
Right. You brought up forgiveness a moment ago, and I've been doing some personal work around that. You know, sometimes I think we have this sort of pedestrian view of what forgiveness is. It's like, okay, they did something to me. It's okay. I forgive you. And it's actually not necessarily that. It might be in some cases, it depends on the scenario. But for the deeper level of forgiveness, sometimes you're forgiving someone. You're not actually going up to them and saying, I forgive you.
Mhm.
You're energetically forgiving them so that you can heal. so that you can heal with whatever is holding you back, even if that other person did something horrible to you or your family, kind of like the example that you gave. But once you can forgive, I think the power of forgiveness is powerful, and it allows you to move on and heal by sort of dealing with that.
Absolutely. And we're talking about another relationship. It's a relationship where you're valuing yourself enough to sit here and go, wait a minute, if I keep drinking the poison and expecting them to die, it's self-destructive. And you realize it's like going, just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you condone what happened.
Right. When that was brought up to me, when I was in my work, my personal work, I was like, I'm not forgiving that person. What they did to me was terrible. But as I worked on it and worked on myself and dug in deeper, and dealt with it, I got it, and then it was so liberating.
It's a gift. It's a gift you give yourself. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to start to wind down just a little bit, but there's still a couple things I want to talk about. The other thing you just mentioned that after you talked about the forgiveness piece is you said the word play. And one of the things I love that you talk about, and I know it's in your book, is the power of play. So share more on that. Go deeper on that.
To me, play is essential. Play is
amen.
I'm sure Betsy probably touched on this a little bit too, but play is tapping into, talk about authentic. When you are truly at play, you still may be strategizing. You may still be having plans of what you're doing, either if it's in sports or just expressing yourself, whatever. But when you see somebody who is truly in the essence of play, they're free from constraints of to-dos, have-tos, this subjectivity of, well, I didn't do that good enough. Or, it's like going, no, when we play, we liberate our soul. We liberate our creativity. And the truth of the matter is this. The reason why fun and play are so essential is once you develop the relationship to liberate your creativity, you start to realize how you create your life. Everything in life is a creation. Today is a creation. What have you created today? And does it make your spirit smile? Or is it more of the same? If it's more of the same, I'll say you're not playing.
Yeah. Tim, we have another shared friend. I'm pretty sure you know her, Jackie Cox.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love Jackie.
And Jackie has a community of which play is an aspect of it. Yeah. And I'm actually a member of her community. And I'll just give an example. I mean, I'm going to ask you in a second to sort of define play, like give us some examples for our listeners might be like, play? What does that mean? Like, play hopscotch, and it could be. But, when Jackie does a once a month activity, when she plans this in her membership community, we went to a place in Denver a few months ago called, I think it was Slick City. And you go indoor sliding, like you get a mat and there's all these different huge slides, and some of them and I remember walking in there going, what? And I was nervous. And then after we went the first time, I felt like I was 10, and we had even my giggle was different. And everybody ended up having that shared experience. And we were all like little kids running around in our socks, carrying our mat, and let's go on the yellow slide and let's go on the red one. And then let's race each other. And it was just, it's the power of play is essential, I think. So how would you sort of define it, just to kind of give a little more explanation of that? I mean, I know I gave you sort of a literal one, but how else?
No, I love what you shared, because the truth of the matter is you tapped into that inner creative essence of a child. You got to realize, how often have you heard the description, oh yeah, I bought my kid this gift, a doll or something like this. They had more fun playing with the box.
Yeah.
Because their play, their creativity, their expressiveness didn't mean that they didn't like the doll. It didn't mean, it was like, I'm going to play with that later, but right now, look what I can do with this. It was like in the presence, it was in the essence. And to me, it's almost a mapping of life.
Mhm.
When this is my own belief system. I believe that when we came here as these divine souls, I don't have any biological children myself. I have 2 wonderful stepdaughters, but I don't have any biological. But I'll say this, when I look at these little infants, I swear they know so much more than the most educated adult on this planet,
Mhm.
the richest adult.
Well, it's they're
They have,
innocent.
well,
They haven't been affected by all the
right.
outside
They haven't,
judgments, habits,
right.
and yeah.
And so they have that in them. And then life says, here, you got to conform to this world. You got to learn how to adapt. You got to potty train. You got to, right, all this kind of stuff. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm still playing, but am I, is it my play or am I being told how to play now? Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think what you had just shared is that's why play is so important, is when we start to tap into that inner child, because it does say, I had a friend share this with me. She said, did you realize that it says that in the book, that it's as a child, you will come to know God. And
You'll come into what?
you will come to know God.
Oh, okay, yes. Mhm.
And when she said this to me, her husband for 40 plus years or more was a pastor. And I said, yeah, I just always believe that, that child that still is in us, and
Mhm.
some of them are hidden away very, very deep, but
Yep.
that child that's still within us, when we start to tap into it, like when you walked into that environment, and the first thing is our looking good, our ego of like,
Mhm.
oh, what are
Am
we
I
going to
gonna
do?
look
We're adults,
Yeah, right.
like this. And then all of a sudden when you started having fun, that little girl in you started to come out and go, no, let's do this, let's
I
play
know.
with this. Yeah.
Well, and then
Yeah.
we all ended up going over there was this, like, low grade sort of almost like a trampoline, but it was like foam, so you could
uh,
jump on it. It wasn't like with springs or something, but you could jump. And one person went on and started jumping, and we all went over and just started jumping like little kids.
that's
And
awesome.
it was just such a it was so much fun, and it just again, it was another awareness. It's like, you know what? We can do all kinds of different things. We don't have to do all these shoulds. Just because I'm 59 years old doesn't mean I can't grab a mat and my stocking feet and go sliding, or take an inner tube and go down the side of a hill with a bunch of other kids or whoever.
Can I do one little
Um,
reflection though from what we're talking about?
yeah.
A lot of the environment or angst that goes on in our world right now is a fight for control.
Mm,
And control is not trust. Control is egoic insecurity.
yep.
And so when we learn to play, when we learn to be present, we can actually start to be more powerful and trust.
Absolutely. Well, what a lovely note to end on. We
I
could
hope
go on and on.
I
I
hope
mean, I could talk to you all day, Tim.
I hope it was
So,
uplifting.
so what is that might be the tip, but let's as we wrap up here, can you just sort of give us one really great little golden nugget of yours, or a good little thought that you want to leave for our listeners who are watching, and for those who are going to be watching on the replay?
What I will say is it's a practice I've shared on a couple other podcasts, and I share it fairly frequently. And it's a gift you give yourself, but it can be challenging for a number of people, and I understand that. And what I say is it's like, give yourself the opportunity once. Oh, I do it once, try to do it once a week, once every 2 weeks. But if you could just do it once a month, that'd be fine. But where you go, you connect with yourself in the mirror, that person that's right across from you. You really acknowledge and admire and give them space because they deserve it. That person across from you. And then with true inquiry, true honor, true curiosity, ask that person how full of BS they are. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like
No, I'm not laughing because it's weird. I'm laughing because I just think, wow, that's a really great exercise.
yeah, we get so caught up into telling ourselves so much, and it's part of how we develop a stronger relationship with what I consider as the overloaded toxic ego.
Yeah.
It's like, don't necessarily believe every saying you say, and don't necessarily believe everything you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's also, and here's the caveat, don't do the typical self-judgment saboteur voice that you probably live with every day.
Right.
It's not that. This is an honoring of that that person in the mirror across from you.
Mhm.
And it's only because they deserve the respect to be loved, cherished, and honored in the fullest way possible.
Exactly. Thank you, Tim. That's a lovely note to leave with our listeners. So thank you for your time. So let's go through some of the ways people can connect with you. For those people who want to connect with you, what are some of the? I would imagine they can connect with you on LinkedIn.
They can connect with me on LinkedIn,
Oh,
and it's
look,
right
there's the
there on
link.
the
Like
screen. Yeah.
magic.
So Tim Salmans at LinkedIn. Also, on LinkedIn, you could do a search for Insights for Choice, and it's insights, the number 4 in choice.com. And on Facebook, it's just, you can look for me at Tim Salmans, or I also do have a site, I forget what you call it, a personalization or whatever, for Insights for Choice there too. So Insights
Okay.
number 4 choice. Or if
Okay.
you want to just reach out to me directly, Tim at insightsforchoice.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And want to just make another quick shout out to Deb, your wonderful wife. She's also working with you in this Insights for Choice, business that you're working on too. That must be fun for you, both of you.
It is. It's we're looking at really kind of getting the community, because we know it's a community. We know that to grow behaviors, it's a continual engagement to override the old patterns, and so it's having the membership and community that actually supports our possibilities as individuals and our possibilities as a collective.
Right. Well, thank you, Tim. It was a pleasure having you on the show today. It was a pleasure having you have
Thank you.
broken coffee with Kate today. At least it didn't spill all over you or anything like that. So thank you everybody for listening. Please, if you have any questions, especially if you're seeing this on the replay, please put the questions in the chat, tag one of us, and we will respond to you in the chat. And obviously you can watch the replay of all of my Coffee with Kate episodes on my website at standingoutonline.com. All of my Coffee with Kate archive is there under the blog tab, and it's all the recordings. And then there's also notes and links and all of that stuff. So thank you again, Tim. And please hang on after we stop the broadcast. And wishing everybody a good several weeks until my next show next month. Thank you.
Thank you.